Rain drizzled over the towering steel skyline of Neo-Lexington, painting streaks across the city's neon lights. Detective Callen Juno stood on the edge of the 47th floor rooftop, staring down at the cordoned-off alley below. Another body. Another victim with the same signs. Complete neurological collapse, eyes wide open in terror, and a gaping hole just behind the ear where something small and precise had punctured the skull. This was the 5th one this month. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, and always in isolated areas where surveillance was either broken or mysteriously wiped. Juno squinted through the gray haze, his synthetic retinal lens scanning the body for abnormalities. But like the others, this one looked almost peaceful, if not for the violent violation of the cranium. He lit a cigarette, something long outlawed in public zones but still permitted under his detective license. Rules rarely mattered in cases like these, especially not when they were chasing a ghost. Back at the precinct, he pulled up the digital case files. All 5 victims were seemingly unconnected. Different ages, different ethnicities, even different social classes. The only common thread was their proximity to Sector 19, a rundown part of the city long neglected by the Urban Restoration Board. It was a place where black market biotech, illegal AIs, and spliced creatures went to hide or to hunt. Juno's fingers tapped rhythmically on the table. The coroner's reports were inconclusive. The brain tissues were destroyed in an identical pattern, but not by any chemical or viral means they knew. Almost as if something had entered their minds and downloaded them until there was nothing left. He needed answers, and for that, he needed to visit someone who owed him more than a few favors. Dr. Tasha Neem, a xenobiologist exiled from the International Research Council for her experiments on neural parasites, now ran a private lab under the name New York Corp Biosolutions. Her building was a forgotten warehouse near the city's old subway grid. "You're early," she said, without looking up from her microscope as he entered. 5 bodies in a month, all dead from some unknown neural extractor, and each within 5 miles of Sector 19, Juno replied, tossing a data chip onto her desk. Neem plugged it into her console, eyes scanning rapidly across the holographic images of brain scans and victim logs. Her expression hardened. "God help us," she whispered. "This pattern isn't new. It's just evolved." Juno raised an eyebrow. "Evolved from what?" Neem turned the screen toward him. "You remember the Wayland-Yutani files? The Black Ops experiments with xenomorph DNA splicing. Urban legend." "No," she said sharply. "Not a legend. One of the things they experimented with was the Facehugger, but the specimens died shortly after implantation. The human body couldn't sustain the transition." Juno leaned in. "You're saying this thing is a hybrid?" "Worse," she said. "They bioengineered a variant. One that doesn't kill its host, at least not immediately. It implants itself, extracts neurological data, memories, emotional reactions, then moves on. The host dies days or weeks later, as if their soul's been drained. And the creature? It jumps into someone else." Juno felt the chill settle into his bones. A creature that could move host to host, stealing minds and memories? It was the perfect predator in a city like Neo-Lexington. "But why now?" he asked. "Why resurface after all this time?" Neem turned away, tapping her console. The display shifted to a set of classified reports. There was a transport ship crash 6 months ago, not far from Sector 19. Carried sealed specimens. Military grade. The manifest was scrubbed from public records, but I found traces in a backup relay. "Let me guess," Juno muttered. "One of those specimens survived." Neem nodded. "And it's learning, adapting, choosing hosts based on their skills, knowledge, maybe even proximity to you." Juno stiffened. "Why me?" Because each victim has ties to your old cases. Victim 3 was a tech dealer you busted for illegal DNA modding. Victim 4 worked security for the biotech firm that you raided 2 years ago. It's not random. It's working its way through your past. The idea clawed at his mind. Something out there was retracing his life like a trail of breadcrumbs. He left Neem with a weaponized neural disruptor, a prototype meant to sever parasitic neural links without killing the host. It was untested, dangerous, but it was all he had. He spent the next days diving into records, cross-referencing every old suspect, informant, and associate from his years in Sector 19. Patterns emerged. Connections surfaced. The victims weren't just from his past. They were people who knew sensitive things. Details about cases that never saw the courtroom. Dirty cops. Hidden files. Someone or something was gathering intel. Then came the 6th victim, Detective Lyra Marks, his former partner. He found her in her apartment, seated calmly in a chair, tea still warm on the table. Her eyes stared blankly at the wall, the same surgical hole behind her ear. She'd been dead for hours, maybe less. Her security system was intact. No signs of forced entry. Whoever or whatever did this walked in like they belonged. Juno's rage boiled over. He contacted Neem again, demanding a way to track the parasite. "I've developed a thermal-laced neurotrace," she told him. "It reacts to irregular brainwave patterns, but it only works if you're within 10 meters. You'll have to get close." He wired the sensor into his jacket, syncing it with his retinal lens. A pulsing amber dot would signal the presence of the parasite's host. It was risky, but Lyra's death had made it personal. He returned to Sector 19, walking the alleyways and abandoned towers like a ghost. The sensor stayed cold until he entered a derelict nightclub, long shut down after a gang shootout. The moment he stepped inside, his vision pulsed amber. Someone was here. He kept his hand on the neural disruptor, stepping over broken glass and shattered tables. The air smelled of ozone and blood. And then he saw her. A woman, late 20s, pale skin, hair cropped short. She smiled at him like an old friend. "Detective Juno," she said warmly. "I've been waiting." He didn't answer. His lens blinked furiously. This was the host. "You don't recognize me?" she asked, stepping closer. "I was Lyra once. Before that, I was Julian Grant. Before him, so many others. You've always left an impression." Juno gritted his teeth. "What are you?" "I'm evolution," she whispered. "I am every mind I've ever touched. I remember everything. You fascinate me, Callen. The way your mind works. So logical. So relentless. I wanted to understand you. So I came for your memories." He raised the disruptor. "You won't survive the transfer," she warned. "I've improved. I can jump minds in under 30 seconds now. Even faster if there's emotional proximity." He fired. The bolt hit her square in the chest. She convulsed, screaming as the neural current ripped through her system. For a moment, something black and sinewy writhed under her skin, bulging from her neck. Then silence. She collapsed. Juno approached cautiously, pulse hammering. The amber dot on his lens began to fade. But then his vision flared red. Behind him, a boy, no older than 10, stood in the doorway. His eyes glowed faintly, his expression blank. It had jumped. The woman's body had only been a decoy, a vessel meant to lure him in while the real host stayed close. Juno cursed himself for missing it. The child opened his mouth, and a voice far older than him spoke. "You're better than I thought, detective, but still too slow." Juno aimed, but his hand trembled. Could he really fire on a child? The creature smiled. "You hesitate. That's what makes you human. And that's what makes you weak. Juno closed his eyes and pulled the trigger. The neural blast hit the boy, but with reduced intensity. The disruptor wasn't calibrated for someone that small. The parasite screamed, a high-pitched psychic shriek that cut through Juno's skull. The child collapsed, unconscious but alive. Neem arrived moments later, summoned by his emergency beacon. She took the child, sealed in a containment pod, back to her lab for extraction and study. The Facehugger hybrid had been stopped. For now. But as Juno stood in the alley, rain falling like judgment from the sky, he couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. The creature had tasted too much of humanity. Its memories, its pain, its intelligence. It would evolve again. And when it did, it would remember him.